Hello, my name's DDavis. This is a paper that I presented at the Internoise 2014 conference in Melbourne in Australia. It's a paper that describes a couple of different methods of how to minimize the overall total cost of noise control mitigation treatments, specifically in the coal seam gas industry, by the selection of the noise control treatments for wellheads using engineering optimization techniques. Now, I believe that the value of engineering can be enhanced if you also use some optimization techniques. So this is roughly the size of the viable coal seam gas fields in eastern Australia. They extend from Queensland in the north down to New South Wales in the south. So this is a typical coal seam gas field in Queensland in Australia. Each of these square dots is a coal seam gas well pad, and on each of these well pads there is some equipment like this, and they usually include a pump, and the pump pumps water. And also associated with that pump is an engine, either an electric engine or a gas-powered engine. And the gas-powered engines are quite powerful, and that means that they're also usually quite noisy. So if you can imagine a house somewhere in the middle of all of this, then they would be receiving late at night the noise from a fairly powerful gas engine running constantly from quite a number of these well pads. The way the coal seam gas works is the coal seam itself is fractured, and then the water is extracted using those pumps, and as that happens the gas naturally escapes from the coal and is taken away by some pipes. The engines themselves are usually driven by the gas. So here's a couple of typical examples of some of those gas engines that drive the pumps. Some of these gas engines can be different sizes. They can be, for instance, 6-cylinder gas engines or 8-cylinder, and they can have different types of noise control treatments applied to the different components of the engine, being the different noise sources. Let's give a quick example of combinations. So if you had 6 objects and you had 2 possible choices for each of those 6 objects, then you'd have a total of 64 possible options for the combinations of those different choices. If you had 3 choices for each of your 6 objects, then you'd have a total of 729 possible options for the combinations. If you had 4 choices, then now you've got 4,096 possible options of different combinations for your 6 choices. If this type of schematic represents a coal seam gas field, where we have the red dots represent the noise sources and the green houses represent the noise receivers, then in this hypothetical space we might have 20 receivers and we might have 373 wells. If each of those wells has 4 possible options for noise control treatments, then you have 37 followed by 223 zeros of options of noise control combinations for those wells. That is a large number. This is an example of the kinds of noise control treatment options that were available for those wells. So this is presenting the noise insertion loss in terms of octave bands for each of the 3 different types of noise control treatments. So there is a 4th type, which is type 0, which is no noise control treatments. So the different noise control treatments cost different amounts, and they achieve different overall insertion loss in terms of decibels in each of the octave bands. If you don't apply any noise control treatments to any of the wells, then you don't achieve the noise limit at any of the receivers. The noise levels received at every receiver is higher than the noise limit. And the cost of doing that is, of course, nothing. If you apply noise control treatment type 1 to all of the wells, then you achieve the noise limit at some of the receivers, but you do not achieve the noise limit at many of the receivers. And the cost of doing that is about $746,000. If you apply noise control treatment type 2 to all of the wells, then you in fact achieve the noise limit at all of the receivers. And the cost of doing that is about $1,119,000. However, you have achieved too much noise reduction. You've achieved more than you need to. That means you've applied noise control to some wells that you didn't need to. You have overachieved the goal, and that means that you have wasted some money. If you apply the best noise control treatment, which is type 3, then you achieve even lower noise levels, which means you have wasted even more money. The cost of that option was about $1,678,500. I've used two different types of optimization techniques in order to choose the best combination of noise mitigation treatments for the wells. One of the methods that I used was an inbuilt optimization module in the software called Sound Plan, and that module was called Expert System Industry. The other method I've used was a modification of the genetic algorithm method called the evolutionary algorithm. The Sound Plan software has a module called the Expert System Industry, and it seems as though the way that this module works is this. It seems as though all of the noise sources have their decibels per dollar calculated for each of their available treatment options. The optimization then proceeds downhill, so to speak, mathematically for each noise source until the noise limit is met at all receivers. That means that the calculation is not recursive, so SoundPlan doesn't consider the possibility that any noise treatment can go back uphill, which, I mean, it can't reduce the amount of noise treatment applied to any noise source in order to achieve a better overall cost result. So this is a recording of the SoundPlan Expert System Industry module running. This is how long it takes to run, only a few seconds, and there it goes, it's finished. So that has now searched through a solution space of 37 with 223 zeros in only a matter of seconds, and it has chosen the most cost-effective combination of noise control treatment options for each of those 373 wells in a very, very quick calculation time. So the SoundPlan calculation concludes that 101 of the wells don't need to get any noise control treatment. 143 of the wells should get type 1 noise control treatment. 80 of the wells should get type 2, and 49 of the wells should get type 3. And that results in a total overall noise control cost of $746,500. The thing about SoundPlan's optimization routine is that every single time you run it, you will always get exactly the same answer. That means that it has no inherent randomness built into its calculation algorithm. And the final optimization technique that I'm going to show is the evolutionary algorithm, which is a modified version of the genetic algorithm. And in general, the way the genetic algorithm works is you start with a population of random guesses. You select some of the options from your population and you join them, and you create a whole new population, and then you go around and around in a cycle like that. You keep creating new generations with new populations drawn from the old populations, and the overall result should get better and better. This is a video of the evolutionary algorithm running. This video is sped up by a factor of 10 times speed. So you can see that it's cycling through many different options. It has solved the problem many times, and it has stopped and converged on what it thinks is the lowest cost possible combination of noise control treatments for all of the different options. And because the method has inherent randomness built into it, nearly every time you run it, you will get a slightly different answer, but it does home in on generally local, what they call local minima. So almost every time it runs, it will come to an answer around about that number. The individual choices of noise control treatments for individual noise sources will be different every single time it runs, but the overall answer will usually be pretty close to about the same number every time. And this is one of the times that it was run. It said that 24 of the wells don't need any noise mitigation, 86 of the wells can get type 1 mitigation, 228 of them should get type 2, and 35 of them should get type 3 mitigation. And the overall total cost is about $1,013,500. It almost always finds a different result because it's got that inherent randomness. And yet, each time you run it, and if it does find a solution, it will always achieve the noise limit at every single receiver. So if we compare the effectiveness of the two different optimization methods that we've looked at, and we consider the case where all of the wells were given type 2 noise mitigation treatments as our base case, where we know that the noise limit was achieved at all of the receivers for a cost of $1,119,000. The evolutionary algorithm chose a combination of different noise control treatment options for different wells for a total cost of $1,013,000, which was a cost saving of almost 10%. And SoundPlan's Expert System Industry module, the inbuilt optimization module in SoundPlan, selected different noise control treatment options for the wells for a cost of $746,500, which is a cost saving of about 33%. So, thank you for listening.